Hello, and welcome to Mail-In It, the official podcast of the United States Postal Service. I'm Carla Kirby.
And I'm Jeff Marino. This episode, we're talking about a topic that impacts every single one of us, mail security. Even in this digital age, the mail system still plays an extremely important role in connecting people, businesses, and communities. That kind of connection needs safeguards to protect not only the mail itself, but also the people who make sure the mail is getting where it needs to go.
Exactly, Jeff. And with the rise in crimes like porch piracy, mail theft, and even threats to postal employees, it's more important than ever to make sure we're paying attention to security.
Of course, that's a pretty big job for an organization that's got about 600,000 employees and 35,000 facilities across the country. It's difficult, but not impossible, as today's guests will explain.
Joining us for this episode are Inspector Buck Buckley and Mail-In It veteran Bob Dixon. Buck is Special Assistant for Strategic Initiatives with the U.S. Postal Inspection Service, and Bob is Senior Director of Delivery and Retail Modernization for the Postal Service. Buck and Bob are going to walk us through everything from high-tech security innovations to the ways employees and even customers can help keep the mail safe. Buck, welcome to Mail-In It, and Bob, welcome back again.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
So I guess the best place to start is to explain exactly what we mean when we talk about mail security.
So mail security includes everything from technology to our training of our carriers to just the physical network that we transport mail across. It starts with really just knowing where everything is, and that includes everything from the packages all the way down to the keys that our carriers have in hand when they go to pick up the mail.
Can you be more specific about the network? Is this physical security? Is this cybersecurity? What are we talking about here?
So for our network, it's both. It is physical security. It is cybersecurity. I focus more on the physical security of our network, but certainly everything that we do, including the hybrid physical and digital aspects of the technology we will put out to secure the mail, works over our IT networks. And so cybersecurity is incredibly important there to make sure that all of that sensitive information is protected as it travels.
I know that during the COVID-19 pandemic, crime against Postal Service employees and the mail had been on the increase. Is that still the case?
It is, and we've seen an increase between 2019 and 2023 of 139% increase for high-volume mail theft attacks, which is significant. The Postal Service was not immune, like most organizations, local police departments, to this increase in crime. Between 2019 and 2023, we also saw an 845% increase in our letter carrier robberies, which is significant. We've seen a decline since then. We've made some great efforts since then on reducing that. Comparatively speaking, in 2019, there was only 64 letter carrier robberies. In 2023, it was 605, and that's unacceptable for the organization. So much of it's carried out by organized crime groups at this point. It is not just an individual stealing mail. It's a much more organized, structured approach. And they get the information from that mail to commit the identity theft, as I mentioned.
So that's a terrible situation for our employees to be in, and that kind of disruption must have quite an effect on our customers, too.
It does. Obviously, the inspection service is concerned about our employees, but we're concerned about our customers and the sanctity of the mail as well. So there has been a lot more package theft and porch piracy of unintended packages as well since the COVID pandemic. There was an estimated 260,000 instances of package theft daily in 2024, mostly in urban and suburban communities. In Tennessee, for example, there was more than 144,000 people that had at least one package stolen over 3 months in 2024. The median value of each of those packages was about $75 a piece.
That's a lot of money and a lot of packages.
So what you're talking about is a pretty steep increase in just a few years. What's the first thing you do when you start to see a trend like that?
So we started by looking at the technology we're using, especially out in the field. We started with looking at our collection boxes and the locks we use to secure them. Buck mentioned earlier arrow keys. Arrow key technology was first deployed in 1922. And having been out in the field lately, I think some of it is still out there. We've done other improvements in 1996 and again in 2023, but that technology really was important for us to evaluate and look at how do we make that better to better secure those boxes so people couldn't break in as easily. We also looked at how tough our collection boxes are. For someone who's not interested in breaking into a collection box, that's a pretty imposing, piece of metal sitting on the street. Unfortunately, our thieves are pretty creative and pretty resourceful when it comes to breaking into them. So we've also implemented a lot of technology to improve how sturdy those boxes are and how much they're going to resist attempts to break into them.
So, Buck, Bob talked about some of the hardware-related things. What is the Postal Inspection Service doing on that side?
So in May 2023, the Postal Service and the Inspection Service launched Project Safe Delivery. It was some unprecedented collaboration between the two teams on really protecting our carriers, protecting our customers, and protecting the sanctity of the mail. So Project Safe Delivery has a couple of different things. Bob already talked about the security technology aspect, right? The box, the locks, all the hardware that goes behind that. And that's what his group really takes ownership of, working in conjunction with us on our security input. We also had an employee safety and awareness campaign that included mailers and stand-up talks to our carriers, making sure that they understand what actions they can take to protect themselves and go home safe at the end of the evening. And then the third prong was the city surge operations, which was a surge in resources from the inspection service. Both our inspectors and our EAS level staff, we send those to strategic areas across the country. We did 16 surge operations in 10 cities across the country, where we have those resources available to really focus on the employee robberies and the mail theft and just focus the resources on those activities directly.
Okay, so let's talk about Project Safe Delivery one step at a time. So, Bob, what was the biggest challenge you faced in updating security that was going to be placed out in the field, especially since you mentioned the arrow keys that had been, out since 1920?
So the challenge is really coming up with something that's very secure but still usable. We've got all of our folks out in the field going to collection boxes, relay boxes every single day. We could weld them shut. That'd be really secure, but probably not very usable. So we had to come up with something that was not going to add time to a carrier's day on their collection route. So we had to figure out some modern electronics and couple that with some advanced physical security to make sure that we got the best benefits of both from a security and a usability perspective. We started with our boxes, as I mentioned earlier, just toughening them up, making sure they were harder to break into. We then looked at what we were going to do with our locks and keys. The locks and keys are probably one of the most challenging pieces of it, because we don't want that key to be a target for thieves. So our primary motivation for everything we were doing there is, how can we make the key still usable but less attractive as a target for theft? Making our carriers a little bit safer by reducing how likely it is someone's going to want the technology they have on their person.
So this is just off the top of my head, but these postal boxes are out there on the streets everywhere, but they're electronic locks. Do we need power to these things? How does that all work?
For all our criminal friends who may listen to our podcast, I'm not going to tell you.
Very good.
But the folks in our engineering teams, I think, came up with some pretty ingenious ways to make sure that those electronics work. They're easy to use, and we're not out in the field replacing batteries every other day. So no spoilers there, but I'm really proud of the engineering team for the creativity they showed in coming up with that solution.
Does it slow the carrier down on the route?
Not at all. So the latest generation of locks and keys does not take any additional time. Put in the lock. I'll say you do have to wait the half second for the lock to beep to let you know it's open. Turn the key, open the box, take the mail out, or in the case of a relay, put the mail in, close it back up, and go about your route. So no additional effort for a carrier, just going about their daily activities.
This type of technology, it seems like you'd be able to track who's opening the boxes, more of an audit trail almost.
So the new electronics that we put out there give us a lot more accountability for what happens to those keys as they traverse their route every day. So we have complete visibility now into what locks those keys are going into, because we know where the locks are, we know where the route has been, and we also have the ability to essentially turn off keys. So at the end of every day, those keys are no longer active. So if one gets stolen, at the end of the delivery day, it's not going to open anything. and it's not going to open anything until it's reactivated the next day.
Interesting. So are these everywhere now, or are we still testing them?
So we are just starting our deployment. We are focused on some areas that have experienced a lot of crime, particularly crimes against collection and relay boxes and crimes against carriers. We're focusing on the neediest areas first, and then we will spread out across the country, focusing again on places that need it most first.
Criminals are very creative, aren't they?
Very crafty. So it's pretty clear that criminals have the luxury of being able to pivot faster than law enforcement. Buck, how do city surge operations help the Postal Inspection Service be more proactive?
So as I mentioned before, we're strategically placing additional resources in those areas like Bob mentioned that really do need it. We follow our crime trends. We see areas that are in higher need than others where, postal crime is getting a little excessive, and we're sending additional resources there to proactively combat mail theft and letter carrier robberies. So we send those additional resources, and they've completed over 1,000 investigative tasks in these 16 surge operations across the country. They've also performed arrow key reviews. Bob mentioned the accountability around those arrow keys. The inspection service is going out and working with our partners in the CRDO organization and conducting arrow key reviews and audits at the stations to make sure that the keys that they have are the appropriate number and that they're all there and accounted for. In addition, we've held more than 600 stand-up talks that have impacted more than 7,600 employees across the organization. We have sent out mailers with pay stubs. We've created new ID cards with some information on it for our employees to make sure that they're educated and aware of what steps they can take as well.
So it sounds like you put a lot of effort into this thing. Are we seeing any results yet that you can share?
We're seeing some amazing results so far. So just under the city surge operations, we've got about 68 arrests that we've been able to document under those. 26 of those are federal and 42 of those are state. Overall, since Project Safe Delivery started in May of 2023, we have over 419 arrests for letter carrier robberies and 2,700 arrests for mail theft-related crimes. We've also significantly raised our reward amounts for information leading to the arrest and conviction of postal crimes, so up to $100,000 for mail theft and up to $150,000 for postal robberies. Last FY, we saw a 27% decrease in letter carrier robberies, and this FY, we're on track to see a 32% decrease in letter carrier robberies.
Okay, I have to ask the question. So these stats are amazing. So when you say federal versus state, I always assumed we were a federal entity, so any type of crime would be a federal crime. So can you differentiate between those?
Absolutely. So we are a federal law enforcement agency and we do carry federal authority. Sometimes depending on things like the prosecutorial environment or working with our local partners or our task force officers that we actually have sworn and deputized that are local officers working with the Postal Inspection Service, sometimes those local prosecution or local arrests will carry some more significant penalties. Sometimes the prosecutorial environment, it's more advantageous for us to go with a local arrest versus a federal arrest.
Okay, so we're talking about more than just fines.
Absolutely. We're talking about actual jail time.
So I'm sure those kind of results help convince people that there's a way to push back against mail crime. So when you talk to employees about their own security, what exactly do you tell them?
One of the biggest things is to be aware of your surroundings, right? You need to look out for yourself out there. Our employees are on the street, 6 to 7 days a week, and they just need to be aware of the surroundings and what's going on around them. One of the other biggest things we tell them specifically when it comes to the arrow keys is that the most important thing is for you to go home at the end of the night. If you get approached by anyone for that arrow key, you're to give up that arrow key, right? We want you to go home safe. It's not worth fighting over the arrow key. Give them the arrow key. We will do the law enforcement action after the fact. You need to go home safe at the end of the evening.
So, Bob, you talk about the continuously improving the security and stuff. What does that look like from your perspective?
So I think, one of the things we never want to see again is a lock from 1922 out in a collection or a relay box. And we have a little collection now of vintage, I think that's the right word for them, vintage locks in a cabinet near my office. To not do that again, even though we are currently deploying our latest generation of lock and key, we are already working on the next generation. We know that our criminals are industrious and trying to find a way around anything that we're putting out there. So rather than waiting for that to happen, this time around, we are spending a considerable effort to figure out where they're going to go and what technology do we need to put in place to try to anticipate what they're going to do.
So we've talked a lot about the behind-the-scenes security that the Postal Service and Postal Inspection Service are working on. Buck, what are some of the security improvements that customers themselves can take advantage of?
So one of the most common things we hear, or complaints we hear, is porch piracy. One way to combat that is to actually have packages sent to a smart locker at your local post office. You can actually receive a QR code. You can still go after hours in most cases and receive that package after hours when it's convenient for you. Speaking of after hours access, another thing that we're working on with Bob's group is extended hours access for post office lobbies. Again, you'll get a QR code to access the post office lobby if it's locked after hours. Just to give you a one-time access, go in and retrieve your package and then leave the post office. Customers can also request signature confirmation for mail or oftentimes being held at their post office as well.
And informed delivery can help with mail security too, right, Bob?
Of course. Informed delivery lets our customers know what's supposed to be arriving in their mailbox later that day. So it's important to really look at informed delivery and say, this is what I'm supposed to be getting. Did it actually arrive? And if there's something in there that, might have identity information or might have financial content, let us know, because that might be something someone may have taken just one piece, or, usually it'll be delivered the next day, but it's always good to be on the lookout for anything that is really financially important to you.
And informed delivery is not just your letter mail, it's also informing on your packages now.
So we do have our packages show up in informed delivery. They show up roughly 3 days before they're supposed to be delivered. So you have a chance to plan if you're going to be receiving a package. And again, if you're really concerned about what's going to be on your front step, as Buck mentioned earlier, we do have our smart lockers in over 700 post offices around the country. They provide a great way for customers to pick up their packages anytime, day or night.
So we've talked about what the Postal Service is doing for security and then what our customers should do. What recommendations are we making to industry shippers to help them improve the overall mail security?
One of the big things that we look at is using plain boxes for no branding, just an indiscreet brown cardboard box without logos on it, right? Logos are sometimes used as an identifier on what the parcel may contain, so it gives some clues there. As we mentioned before, the smart lockers can be used as a shipping destination for some of our commercial clients, so you can have it sent directly there or to a P.O. Box locker for forward warehousing as well. And then with our customers, one other thing that we do encourage them is to check the last pickup times on their collection boxes, right? All of our blue boxes do have a label on them that say when that last pickup time is. Try to get your mail in before that, especially on weekends. You don't want the mail sitting in a blue box over the weekend.
So I just want to ask you both, how do you feel? Like, Bob, you talked about having a collection of old locks and hundreds, probably thousands of arrow keys that have been collected over the time. How do you feel like we're doing in terms of securing the mail these days? Because this is a lot of work on all of you guys' part.
I think we're doing better than we ever have before. I think like the rest of our organization is that we have gone through years of, deferred maintenance. And we talk about our facilities with network modernization all the time between the SNDCs and the RP&DCs, right? The years of deferred maintenance in those facilities, we're experiencing the same thing on this side of the house, right? It's years of, we have locks from 1922 out there. That's ridiculous. It's a large scale effort to try to combat all of this at this point.
So what's keeping you up at night these days?
What keeps me up at night is the sheer volume, right? The sheer volume and trying to ensure that we still have executive level buy-in, right? We have new leadership in place now at this point, and that's what keeps me up at night.
How about you, Bob? How do you feel about all this?
So I'll agree. What keeps me awake at night is the scale of what we need to do, right? It's not just physically deploying new locks. I mean, you can go padlock a box and say, okay, I put out X number of padlocks, right? Everything we're putting out has electronics in them. One of the things that, is unique about us as an organization is our scale. So when you think about how many mail receptacles are out there that have locks in them, and now they all have electronics in them, and now they're all gathering data, and they're managed with data, it's a lot from our IT systems to have to manage and be timely with. What we can't have is a delay in a system because then someone can't open the box to get the mail out, or someone can't deliver the mail to a CBU. It's important more than ever because those systems are going to be really impactful to our delivery operations. And if we don't get them right at the scale we need to get them right, we're actually impacting people's ability to do their job, to get their mail, to get the things that are important to them every day. So yeah, that keeps me awake at night and why Buck isn't answering my emails at 3 o'clock in the morning.
So I have a question listening to this. So we have all the data. We have statistics on, what's happening in the routes. Has there been, I guess, enough data to keeping boxes where they are or routing those drops to like a local post office, somewhere that is more conducive, I guess?
Yeah, so the crime is not just the blue boxes, right? We automatically think of blue boxes and relay boxes, and those are actual point of entries, and there's and point of crime. There's no doubt about that. But statistically speaking, the amount of blue boxes we have out there is far outnumbered by the number of neighborhood collection units we have out there, the CBUs, the NDCBUs. Those are also points of compromise. The relay boxes. So the blue collection boxes, the relay boxes is one point of compromise, but we do have all those other receptacles as well.
Okay, so you're going to have to break down the acronyms for me.
Sorry, so CBUs are the cluster box units, and the NDCBUs are the neighborhood delivery cluster box unit.
Okay, so when you go into a new development and they have a whole grouping.
Correct. So the blue boxes are great if you're trying to steal mail that's going out, right? Whether it's going to the banks, whether you're paying your credit card bills, that's the outgoing mail. Those cluster boxes in front of newer complexes, since we don't typically do, house delivery anymore, we typically do cluster boxes. Those are a great point of entry for mail coming to the customers themselves, and just as critical and important to protect. And one of the big talking points we have is we've made all this progress. You asked what keeps me up at night. From the inspection service, the customer protection of financial information, their identities, that is all very important to us. Also extremely important, I can't underemphasize our carrier safety, right? There is no level of attacks on our carriers that is acceptable for the inspection service. And we're going to aggressively investigate, pursue, and prosecute those to the best of our ability anytime it happens. So our carrier robberies are our number one focus when it comes to all of these crimes. Our carriers should be able to go out, work their job on the street and be safe, and not be at fear that they're going to be held at gunpoint for a key or for mail. And so we will aggressively investigate all of those crimes when they happen. We know that there's still more work to be done.
Anything we missed? Anything you want to go over again?
So Buck talked about all the statistics to show improvement. Now, this is where my geeky side really comes out. We deployed some of the brand new locks in a sort of rough neighborhood over the course of a couple of days. I and my team went back to spot check some of the installations 2 days after a particular collection box had been installed. We'd already seen someone attempt to break into that box. We could see the pry marks on the door. We could see where they'd attempted to compromise the lock. It was really satisfying to see that the lock held, the door did not open, and that the mail inside remained safe. And I'm going to add one more thing. I think this is, and Buck can speak to this, he talked about the collaboration between the Postal Service and the Inspection Service. I think this is the first time we've had such a deep level of engagement on any single initiative to get something this important done. I know that Buck and I work together daily to make sure that we stay on the same page for what's going on. And it's been a great opportunity for us to show what the two sides of the organization can do when we work together.
Was there something that precipitated this level of engagement and interaction between the two?
So Project Safe Delivery in and of itself was one thing. Part of the level of engagement is the fact that I got put on a special assignment over to report to Linda Malone, the Vice President of Engineering, to increase inspection service engagement with engineering systems. At the time, she had NGDV, the new carrier vehicles, as well as box and lock technology, as well as network modernization. So all that fell under Vice President Malone, and she wanted to ensure specifically with the new carrier vehicle that it was the safest vehicle that we've ever deployed for our carriers. So I got put over on a special assignment reporting directly to her, which was supposed to be a couple-day-a-week assignment. It has now turned into its own position, and I split my time, reporting directly to the Chief Postal Inspector and then to Vice President Malone still.
Excellent. Well, thanks to you both, Buck and Bob, for walking us through the many layers of work that goes into securing the mail. I feel like overall we've got people who know the technology, are passionate about the work, and really care about securing this. So thank you both.
Absolutely. Definitely learned a couple great things today, and going to be looking for those arrow key locks.
If I've done my job, you won't notice them.
Exactly.
It's time for another round of Did You Know, when we share interesting facts about the Postal Service. What do you have for us this episode, Jeff?
Well, now that we know a whole lot more about how the Postal Service and the Postal Inspection Service secure the mail, I thought this one would be interesting. Did you know that both played a vital role in moving more than $9 billion worth of the U.S. government's gold bullion to Fort Knox during the late 1930s and early 1940s?
So $9 billion? That must have weighed 1,000 pounds. I hope they used a strong envelope.
Well, there was more than 26,000 pounds altogether, and they used Post Office Department trucks, Railway Mail Service, and U.S. Army trucks to make the delivery. Here's the short version of the story. As World War II approached, the U.S. government decided it didn't want so much of its gold reserves in New York City and in Philadelphia. That's because those big cities were too close to the coast and more likely to be attacked during a war. So they built Fort Knox in Kentucky. They trusted the post office, along with a large detail of postal inspectors, soldiers, mint guards, and Secret Service agents, to make sure all that gold was securely transported the 800 or so miles from one vault to another.
What a huge responsibility. How long did it take to move 26,000 pounds of gold?
The first shipments from the New York Assay Office and the Philadelphia Mint to Fort Knox took the first 6 months of 1937. They used armored rail cars and several decoy trains to help protect 4,500 tons of gold and the people guarding it. By the time that was done, Fort Knox was home to about 45% of the nation's gold reserves. In March 1941, the Postal Service moved even more gold between New York and Kentucky using 45 specially guarded trains. That shipment was more than 8,800 tons and took 7 months.
Sounds like a very complicated delivery.
It was, but don't worry, the Post Office Department collected about $1.8 million in postage and fees for their troubles. And that wraps up this edition of Did You Know?
So, Jeff, if nothing else, I think I was very impressed by the level of security with these new boxes and just making sure that carriers are safe, making sure that the mail is safe, and that we're reducing the number of thefts across the country. What did you take away from today?
I was impressed with the level of collaboration that's going on, where something used to be isolated to technology to help with this stuff or the prosecution of the cases and investigation. The collaboration that Bob and Buck have going on here right now is really impressive. But I got to admit, the technology that these locks encompass, having to work in all of the environments that our carriers have to work in, the freezing cold, the desert heat, the humidity along coastlines, having all of that work all the time, be completely reliable and be completely transparent to a customer is pretty impressive work.
Definitely. So that's all for this episode of Mailin' It. Don't forget to subscribe to Mailin' It wherever you get your podcasts to make sure you don't miss the next episode. And follow along on Instagram at US Postal Service, X at USPS, Facebook, and YouTube.com/@USPS.